Coming up on Need to Know, anti-Muslim rhetoric doesn't only exist in presidential campaigns or sprinkled throughout national media. It also exists in Rochester. It can be experienced in grocery store checkout lanes, school classrooms, and neighborhood hangout spots. What you need to know about the effects of Islamophobia in our community, that's next. Also on the show, bringing back Rochester's glory days of soccer. The new owners of the Rochester Rhinos have big plans to rejuvenate the team. Learn how their vision involves you. Need to Know starts now. A political jab here and there is commonplace amongst presidential candidates in the heat of election season. But this year, it seems nothing is off the table, including very personal character assassinations. But there's one common theme taking place that President Barack Obama has called inexcusable political rhetoric. He's talking about controversial statements made against Muslim Americans. But this is not just happening on the political stage. It's happening in the media, in school classrooms, and your favorite stores. So how does Islamophobia, as it's called, affect our community? Joining me to discuss just that is Sarir Fazili, president of the Islamic Center of Rochester. Fatima Bawani, a biology and religion major at the University of Rochester. Dr. James Spiller, assistant provost for research and scholarship and graduate school dean at the college at Brockport. And the Reverend Dr. Denise Yarbrough, director of religious and spiritual life at the Interfaith Chapel at the University of Rochester. And welcome to all of you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having us.
So just to begin, I'm not sure that everyone watching the program right now is familiar with the word Islamophobia and what it means exactly. And Sarir, I want you to define it. I understand that it was a phrase introduced more than 2 decades ago. It's a blanket statement, I get, that means many things, but how would you define it today?
Islamophobia, from what we're seeing, is essentially the fear of anything having to do with either Islam in general or Muslims in particular, and anything that they may be associated with, speak about, or even participate in. What we see in a practical way is that the moment something happens, whether good or bad, anything associated with Islam is being portrayed so poorly and with such a broad brush that each and every person, whether a professional, a young student, a mother dressed in Muslim garb, what have you, they're immediately looked at askance with a jaundiced eye, and people are looking for reasons to find fault with them. To me and to a lot of members of the community, that is almost the practice every day of Islamophobia.
Before we address the current anti-Muslim rhetoric in our society, Jamie, explain the history behind how we got to this point. How did the tension between Muslim and Western societies originate? And I understand that the very foundation, past all the layers, has to do with immigration in part. If you can explain that.
Yeah, so just to add to the context of Islamophobia, within a particular national community, there's often the fear and anxiety that people of Muslim faith are not assimilable or able to embrace the values, the culture, the political culture of a particular nation. So in the United States, there's a long history of anxiety about people of other faiths or of a variety of national origins as to whether or not they can be fully assimilable to what is perceived by majoritarian peoples as the American way, whether that is a political culture of liberalism, of individual rights and democracy, whether it's a religious culture, and there's a majority religious culture in the United States that's traditionally Christian and Protestant. So there's a long history in terms of immigration in the United States of concern that people from particular parts of the world. In the 19th century, it was from Asia or from Southern and Eastern Europe, of Catholic populations or even Jewish populations. The concern that these populations were not assimilable into the United States and into the American way. And in the late 20th century, as the streams of immigration shifted more to Asia and the Middle East in particular in the late 20th century and in the past decade, there's been increasing concern voiced by many people, many nativists in particular, that people of Muslim faith coming from the Middle East and Southern Asia pose a threat to either American culture or political culture or the economic fabric of the country as well.
From the attacks in Paris, the shootings in San Bernardino, most recently the attacks in Brussels. The events over the past few months have all inflamed this anti-Muslim discrimination, not only in the U.S., but also overseas. And Fatima, how does the ripple effect of these global and national incidents, how would you say we're feeling that closer to home and in ways that members of our community may not realize or fully understand?
You know, I think in terms of my personal experience, I've been very fortunate to have grown up in Rochester. And I think in this community, we're very fortunate that we live in a very open-minded community. So what I've noticed is that people are definitely more willing to ask questions. So especially as someone who is very visible as a Muslim, because I wear the hijab, they can clearly identify that I am someone of this background. So I've gotten a lot more questions, that's for sure. But in terms of actual Islamophobia, thankfully I've not had many experiences with that. In fact, what I've noticed is that after these attacks in particular, I received several emails from faculty and staff just making sure that I was okay and letting me know that they were there to provide any support if I needed it. So thankfully, I think, you know, we've had a lot of support from communities around the Rochester area, and I'm sure Sarir can speak to this as well. But for example, at our community, we had a group of nuns, I think it was, from Nazareth College, who came to serve food at our Friday prayers because they wanted to show that they were in solidarity with us. We had communities around the area reaching out to us, letting us know that if we had any safety or security concerns, they would stand with us. So I think overall it's been an overwhelmingly positive and supportive response.
I couldn't have said it any better myself. It was amongst the greatest surprises that after these episodes, especially Paris and San Bernardino, my phone rang off the hook. And I'm not exaggerating. Complete strangers had gone to our website, gotten a phone number, and called to say how sorry they were that Muslim communities were being looked at with a very disrespectful eye. Because of what had happened in these isolated incidents, either domestically in California or overseas. The example Fatima cited was incredible. This group of nuns was adamant. They wanted to come and show people that they were with us and they would stand with us. They insisted they would bring dessert, they would bring treats. And not only did it help us in-house, but the show outside, for people to know that there were faith-based communities coming to us, not because we asked, but because they insisted that they would stand with us. You couldn't ask for a better example of what Western New York and this area is all about, because without them, you know, we really would have had a very difficult time trying to show people where we are and what we stand for. They did it for us, and you know, we are eternally grateful because they gave us the opportunity to talk to them, to engage with them, and they in turn take the message outside for us.
I think that what Fatima and Sarir are saying about the special nature of the Rochester community that has a very strong tradition of interfaith dialogue and exchange is reflected in a global Gallup poll, which shows that people who are less integrated and exposed to people of other groups, other races, other religions. And this was a poll that was specifically about Islamophobia, that people who have less exchange and interaction have a higher incidence of anxiety and fear about the other and about Muslims in particular.
And Denise, these interfaith dialogues, Fatima explained to me, this is something that is very important to you at the U of R, and that you've been actively working in terms of bringing students of all religious backgrounds together to have these conversations.
Yeah, exactly. I've been involved in the interfaith dialogue at the community level too for well over a decade now with the ICR and Christian Muslim Relations Commission and the Catholic Muslim Alliance. We all work together, and I work really hard on the campus to bring that to enable the students to have the same kind of experience. I mean, we have a very diverse campus, and we have a pretty significant Muslim student population. And at the Interfaith Chapel, we have 9 religious communities that are affiliated with the chapel. And part of the agreement when you affiliate with the chapel, which means that you get access to our students and get to be on campus, is that you have to agree to be a part of an interfaith community. And so all of the religious communities agree that they're going to do interfaith dialogue together. So we have 2 Muslim student associations, an undergraduate and a graduate one. And they obviously take care of the Muslim students and their needs, but they also are very active in the interfaith programming that we do on the campus all year long. We host visits to the ICR so that students who've never been to a mosque can go and see a mosque, and they talk to the youth group at the ICR, and they're amazed when they meet these young people. And we do interfaith banquets. Last December, the MSA actually sponsored an Islamophobia panel where a group of the students, and they actually co-sponsored it with a fraternity, which was an interesting co-sponsorship. And that panel got an enormous response. Lots of people went to it, and I'm very proud to say the MSA and the fraternity are winning an award tonight at the university for that panel, where the Muslim students made themselves very vulnerable. I mean, they actually told stories of incidences where they have been on the receiving end of Islamophobia. But it's important for people to hear those stories, because what happened after that was so many other students went up to them and said, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry you had to put up with that." And we're trying to create an environment on campus where these students get to know one another, and if, just as you said, once people know Muslims, they're not afraid of them anymore.
And through that experience, are there challenges that you encounter, or any type of resistance that you encounter?
On the campus, not as much, because the University of Rochester is very, very dedicated to diversity and building. We have a program we call One Community. I mean, we're really heavily about helping students to become global citizens and learn to get to know people not like them. And all of the religious communities in the chapel are dedicated to it, but we have an intercultural center and we have diversity committees. I mean, we do a lot of this work all the time. So we're encouraging the students from the minute they arrive as freshmen, get to know people who are not like you, learn about the diversity of the world, become comfortable talking with them. One of our favorite activities for the Muslim students and the interfaith students just last week is Hijabi for a Day. We've now done this for 3 years, where girls who are not Muslim wear the hijab for a day, and then at the evening they all come together, and the non-Muslim women speak about what it was like to walk around with this visible symbol of Islam all day long, and how that, what kind of reactions they got.
I recently spoke with Ahmed Salah. He's a co-owner of the Corner Store University in the neighborhood of the Arts. And those watching may remember hearing about the store being vandalized in March with racial slurs. And he told me while that was an isolated incident, he said he received immense support from the community since that time. He explained to me that the issue extends beyond the Corner Store. And there was something that he wanted to share, and I want us to take a look at that conversation.
I didn't want to mention it long time. Something is going on like this in school. I never want to mention it because I really forgive about it, and I want to discuss that in school. There's a few kids, they called my son a terrorist. They were blaming him for what's going on. I don't know what they made that story for. He wants to that his principal, and he was crying. Why people playing him for something is that he's not doing it. I called the school. I went over there and discussed that with school teachers, and everything was okay. But I just didn't like that people just blame it on kids. We don't want our kids to be involved with this stuff. I mean, the kids, he's an American citizen. I am too. We raise him how to love America and how to be a good citizen. We felt like we are not liked around here, but the truth, it was totally different. Thank you much. Have a good day. Take care now. We start getting all the supports from people. So we start getting stronger, and we really felt so happy, and we know that person will just not represent just not everyone, he just represent himself. Me and my family, we love to be here, and every one of them are like, they're all doing their best to improve. They are good citizens too. I just want to know, like, if I ever come out with my family and she wearing a scarf, that's just a religion thing. So when I walk out with my family, I just want to feel like I'm free. She could wear whatever she want to wear, as long as she's a good citizen, and that's it.
Ahmed said to me he has concerns with the presidential election and the rhetoric that we're hearing right now, and how he believes it's tying into things that kids are seeing in the classroom and what's being exposed in the community at large and beyond. And I'm curious to know, why is it that during these presidential elections, this type of thing just seems to intensify more and more?
I think we're seeing it for the first time, really. Some of the candidates have taken license to speak with no filter. And the unfortunate thing has been that they have gotten publicity because not of their policies, but literally because of the bashing that they have done to various communities. Whether they were Muslims or the Muslim community, they were the press, or even people who are disabled. There has been no response from reasonable-minded citizenry and other forms of government advising them, maybe take it down a notch. It's not a Republican or Democratic thing. This is an American thing. And when it trickles down, when our students are affected in schools, when people are affected in their workplaces, they have a hard time sometimes knowing where they can turn. If people who are claiming to want to lead this nation are identifying and abusing a rather large segment of the citizenry, we have a serious problem. And there's no way that Muslims will feel that they will even be able to have a say, or that somebody might step up for them, short of them doing it themselves. And they've done it. But when you hear presidential candidates or people vying for the presidency speaking like this, it tells somebody, a regular guy, that he may not have a place in this country, and that's very unfortunate.
I think sadly also this has been a pattern that we've seen unfortunately in many points in American history. We think back to around World War II, when there was a very strong anti-Jewish sentiment for the Jewish refugees who were coming in. There have been times where there have been anti-Japanese, anti-Italian, anti-immigrant sentiments, and for some reason, politicians are using fear as a tool to garner power and support.
An important conversation, and definitely an issue that we will continue to explore. And I want to wish a special thank you to my guests for joining me today. And we look forward to having you back on the program. And we touched upon the presidential election quite a bit in our discussion. While the New York primary is over, with Republican Donald Trump and Democrat Hillary Clinton winning their home state, the election coverage will continue here on WXXI. Be sure to stay tuned to AM 1370, WRUR 88.5, and WXXInews.org for the latest news and updates on election 2016. Secretary of State John Kerry has talked about the power of soccer and its ability, like other sports, to unify, show commonality, and to bring out the best. Well, soccer sure has a history in Rochester, and it's that history, combined with a winning pro men's soccer team going into its 21st season this weekend, that's the start of a recipe for success for the new owners of the Rochester Rhinos. But bringing out the best for them means a new vision, a new fan experience, and a new effort to collaborate with the community. Joining me to talk about the future of soccer in Rochester are the owners of the Rochester Rhinos, David and Wendy Dworkin. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So you have a hand in the world of basketball, specifically with the NBA Sacramento Kings franchise, which was originally based in Rochester, called the Royals, and now you have a hand in the world of soccer. So why soccer? What was the motivation behind becoming owners of the Rochester Rhinos?
The call came. That's how it started.
You picked up the phone.
Actually, David picked up the
it was
phone.
unintended. We were away in Toronto watching a Kings-Raptors game and driving home. I got an email with Rhinos in the heading, and I didn't know the person, called him, and basically he was hired to sell the team. And we had a long ride back from Toronto. We were in the car and just started talking about it, and we hadn't thought about it at all. And we look at all investments, so we talked and got some numbers, and as time progressed, we kind of realized that this could really, not only could it really happen, but more importantly, it could really leave Rochester. And that was really more, it was more about it staying here than it was about us getting involved. And sometimes you're just the right place, the right time.
What type of message do you think that sends to the team, the club, and the Rochester community to know that the new owners not only have roots in Rochester, but you also have this appreciation for, this home team athletics to such a degree?
Well, we wanted the team to stay here, not just for us, but for the whole community. It is a community asset. It's a great family activity, yet it's also a great activity, for millennials. Go to a game, start off your evening, and then they can do something else. If you're a family, it's a great way of spending an afternoon. I'll talk about some of the improvements that we'll be making to even enhance that family experience. And it just lends to the quality of life of the community where it is.
Well, the Rhinos won the United Soccer League Championship in 2015. Mm-hmm. And Wendy, you've said, Rochester residents, for the most part, they weren't aware of the huge successes of the team on the field. Why do you both think that's so?
Well, it was really sad, I think, for the team, the coach, and the front office staff to have really the finest soccer product in the USL and to have it go unnoticed in its own hometown. For some reason, the media didn't really give them their fair share of airtime in the various media outlets. They were understaffed in the front office, and that certainly was not the fabulous employees' fault, but there was no way they could get everything done that needed to be done with the amount of staff that they had. And when you don't, have the media support, and then people in the community don't know about them and what the great product is, it becomes a very quickly snowballing effect.
It does.
Well, David, you said that you don't only want to preserve this rich legacy of the Rhinos, you want to create this outdoor entertainment venue that can draw in fans from throughout Western New York to really elevate the experience. My husband used to go to the games, and he said it was an event.
Yes.
Everyone would come, and you'd stand, you'd talk, you'd watch the games, you would meet new people. I mean, it was just the thing to do, in the evening. So talk about what this new experience looks like and what you want people to experience.
Well, I think the first thing, as you mentioned, was it was always the place to be. For years and years, when it was at Frontier, and then for a while when it was at the stadium, everyone wanted to be there. There were 10,000 fans in some cases. I think what's happened is as time progressed, those fans kind of dropped off a little bit. But for us, the key is everyone has different reasons why they go to any sporting event. People go to a soccer game. They may not like soccer, but their spouse may like soccer, their friends do. So for us, it's the touches. Are we able to bring someone who loves the good product on the field? Is there someone else that cares more about, for example, the entertainment factor? We have bounce houses, we have bands. So for us, the goal is to have so many different ways that you can have a good experience, that we can cause everyone in Rochester to say, I can go here, I can have a good time. There's good food, there's good music, there's good stuff on the field. So that's really our overall plan there.
And I understand you have like a 2-year plan to implement some of the changes that you want to take place. Will any of these changes be evident on Saturday's home opener?
Yes. Everyone's heard practically about the new scoreboard, right, which is beautiful, and the graphics on it are great, so accomplished. New turf, it's in, they've practiced on it, it's fabulous to play on, that's accomplished. We will start rolling out, some music before the games, so that's going to be at the home opener, live bands and Bucksters. We've already started improving the food program, so you'll see that, especially in one concession that we've partnered with Buddha Pub to make it more of a gastropub. And then you'll see some other concessions that are not open yet, so you'll have our old favorites like Bill Gray's and Nance's Fried Dough, but you'll see some other concessions that we're working on the next available concept. You'll see a beer garden concept rolled out hopefully sometime this season. Field seats, which I don't think there's anything like it in Rochester, to my knowledge, where we have comfortable, very heavily padded chairs with armrests and cup holders that you are literally on the field. You are so close to the players, it's unbelievable. So that's a new experience. And then we've added some special seating called a Golden Rhino Club that has access to a VIP tent and specialized food before the game. So we've tried, like David said, having all these separate and different touches. So no matter what experience you're looking for, we can fit that need.
You've made this commitment, and in essence, you've called on the community to also make a commitment. You said, you know, business community, fans, we need you to get here, to fill the seats. It's early, you know, we're just, the home opener is Saturday, but is there a sense that the community and the business community is responding?
They are.
I think the short answer is, Wendy said, is yes. What we found is that there have been people who have never supported the Rhinos, whether it's through tickets or sponsorships or anything in the past, and they've called the office and said, listen, we want to support this team. We need to do our part. And they bought tickets, or they'll rent the party deck or one of the party suites. But the fact that there are those people getting behind it, that's great. Would we want more? Sure, you always want more, because more is always better. You have more fans, you have more people interacting. But again, we've only had 45 to 60 days since we've really acquired this team. And to get all those things accomplished, it's a lot to do. And that's why it is that 2-year process. But we've been pleased so far. And as the season progresses more, I'm certain, I mean, we had a call yesterday from someone just literally out of the blue and said, I love what you're doing. I'd like someone to come talk to me at our office and talk to some of our employees, because we want to commit somehow.
Well, a very special thank you to my guests, Wendy and David Dworkin. Thank you for joining me. We wish you much success, the Rhinos much success this new season. Be sure to check out the Rochester Rhinos for yourself. You can see all the action starting this Saturday, April 23rd. The home opener begins at 5:05. All the details are on your screen. For more information and to purchase tickets, go to rhinosoccer.com. And before we let you go tonight, here's a sneak peek at a WXXI original documentary airing next Thursday night at 8 o'clock about Rochester's very own Tom Golisano. Take a look.
The fact that this building is constructed for what it's constructed for, has our family name on it, just overwhelms me.
This is generosity right to the core.
He wants people to grow, he wants the business to grow, he wants the community to grow.
When he was young, he had hard times, okay? And I think that put a dent into his thinking. And now that he has done better, he wants to give it back.
The only wealth that you get to keep is that which you give away. The only wealth you get to keep is that which you give away.
Thursday night at 8.
And that's it for this edition of Need to Know, Rochester's news magazine. I'm your host, Helene Bianduti-Hofer. Thank you for joining me tonight and throughout the weekend right here on WXXI TV.